On June 17, at the end of the G7 summit meeting, which took place in France, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, he had met with the French President, Emmanuel Macron, at the Palace of Versailles. And there, he signed the Memorandum of Understanding, which lays out some details, 14 points to finally address the conflict with Iran. And Iran, with Masoud Pezeshkian, who is the president of Iran, did the same, physically signing this memorandum. And Pakistan, through the Pakistani Prime Minister, also signed this memorandum to put immediate negotiations into practice and to set some specific deadlines of 30 days and also 60 days to be put in place. An end to this war of attrition that has been going on for more than 100 days. Of course, after the signing of this Memorandum of Understanding, the conflict ceased. They ended. So there was the possibility of a scheduled meeting for last Friday in Switzerland, face-to-face between Jade Vance, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Abbas Aragada from Iran, and also the president of the Iranian parliament, Ghali Ghalibaf, in Switzerland. But it didn't happen because of the attacks that Israel carried out against Hezbollah positions. After the militant group there in the Lebanon region, financed by Iran, attacked a unit with Israeli soldiers and killed at least 4 soldiers. So this meeting was postponed to today, this Sunday, June 21st. And this meeting, of course, in Switzerland, there in the region of the famous hotel, it brought together face-to-face the main delegations from the United States, Iran, as well as Pakistan and Qatar, which also contributed to making this meeting possible. And here I will analyze in detail how this meeting went, what topics were discussed in this meeting, which I consider to be difficult topics to debate. And I'll go ahead and mention right away something that happened during this meeting in Switzerland. I must say that Abbas Zaragash, who was representing Iran, did not accept the invitation from the Pakistani Prime Minister to shake hands, to greet the American delegation, which was just a few meters away, about 2 to 3 meters from them. I'm Felipe Moretti, and here I cover geopolitical issues from a military perspective. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, subscribe and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any content here on the channel. This document, which had been in development over the past few weeks, was something Donald Trump had said more than 30 times was coming, that it was moving forward. And then people were pressuring him like, hey, you keep talking about it, but where's this agreement? Where's this document? So the moment of decision arrived, the moment not just to want to end this conflict, but to lay out each side's positions and understandings, their difficulties and their demands and requirements, face to face, opposite one another in Switzerland. And that actually happened. This document, which is the Memorandum of Understanding, is an agreement, a high-level interim document that postpones the most sensitive and difficult issues for the next 60 days. So there will be a window of at least 60 days during which these main relevant points will be discussed. And these most relevant points currently being discussed are based on a permanent ceasefire with the immediate and lasting end of these military operations on all fronts, in Iran as well, and also in Iranian actions against the bases and allies of the United States as well as in Lebanon. With Israel and Hezbollah, which is a militant group supported by Iran, that still maintains these offensives. Of course, on Friday, after this internal pressure from the United States on the shoulders of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel and Hezbollah, they announced an immediate ceasefire in the face of these hostilities. But then there's a catch. Today, this Sunday, the Minister of Defense, Israel Katz, from Israel, he announced that his troops were prepared for any attack, ready to defend themselves, and that his forces already had absolute orders to respond accordingly if there was an imminent threat ahead, if Hezbollah made any threatening move. So, there is a situation of instability. There is a situation of imminent friction in Lebanon and on the northern Israeli border. But this could directly implicate and impact the ongoing negotiations between Iran and the United States, because Iran, as he said, he made it very clear that a common and final understanding will only be possible with the end of hostilities in Lebanon. So this is very difficult to conclude, very difficult to achieve, because it's no longer within the scope of the Americans or Iran. Because Hezbollah itself can attack and Israel can also attack positions in Lebanon and vice versa. So it goes beyond the security scope and the reach of these nations. There's also a difficult issue regarding the Strait of Hormuz for the United States to completely remove the blockade, and it seems that this is already happening. There's also traffic, both ships coming from and going to Iran. There's also normal traffic in some areas further south of the Strait of Hormuz, closer to the Oman region, where the flow is more adequate, and it seems to be normalizing. However, there is information that Iran had once again blocked its portion of the Strait of Hormuz. So that's the information. This more sensitive issue is that Iran is advocating for a reopening, but at the same time it's also supporting closure and so-called control in the region. Then he says that for there to be normal flow, those vessels entering these areas of the strait need to inform the Iranian maritime authorities through a form that they are passing through the region. They need to ask for permission to pass, and that's not what the United States wants. They want free navigation. However, at the same time, what used to be navigation based on tolls doesn't seem to be happening today. Iran is not asking for money in exchange for allowing this traffic. And it seems that this memorandum stipulates 60 days with no fees being charged, which is the final discussion period to wrap things up and formalize the final agreement between the parties, and no longer a memorandum, which means 14 points or topics that will be discussed for the final agreement. Okay? There are also issues involving sanctions, involving Iranian assets that are blocked and frozen abroad, which the United States would release, granting exemptions for these assets that are currently frozen overseas. This means that the Americans would release this money, but at the same time they deny it, saying that this money will only be released once Iran completes them. Some processes that are included in the Memorandum of Understanding, which involve ballistic issues, the Strait of Hormuz, proxy groups, and most importantly, the nuclear program. And even an issue where this fund or Iranian assets abroad can be released and help in the reconstruction of Iran. Others already say the opposite, as Iran itself is saying that the Americans would help with the restoration of Iran and provide investment, or rather, a payment program in the range of $300 billion for the reconstruction of post-war Iran. But the United States denies it, saying that this is fake news. So we're not sure about this amount or where it's going. And of course, without a doubt, the issue of the nuclear program, where Iran reaffirms that it will not seek a program aimed at military purposes, but rather for civilian purposes. And The Americans want this uranium to be destined for low enrichment, to be dissolved together with other uranium minerals, so that it goes from 60% purity to lower levels. There, for peaceful purposes, for research and control, for example, for civil energy purposes, for research, which is around 3.70, or even a little above that, just slightly above that, for civil and not military purposes. But Iran says something else. They say they won't discuss enriched uranium, that this is a very sensitive topic, along with ballistic missiles as well. These are topics that will not be discussed, and these are topics that will not be addressed, that are impossible to be debated in this memorandum. So that's already a point of friction between them, which could become a breaking point. So in general, this Memorandum of Understanding, which was discussed today in Switzerland, with J. Vance, Whit Coffee, with Abbas Zargash, Ghalibaf from Iran, together with the Prime Minister of Pakistan, along with the authorities from Qatar. It is, in fact, a conditional and reversible document. This has many implications, including economic relief, of course, dependent on Iran fulfilling its obligations, especially in the nuclear sector. That's why it was a meeting that took place in a nation that is naturally, recognizably, and historically neutral, like Switzerland. And it was a quadrilateral meeting that involved these four countries, the four parties, to address a very important issue. And these talks, as I have already highlighted here, focused on these topics, such as the nuclear program, the ballistic missile program, the issue of Iranian economic resources frozen abroad, the issue of the Strait of Hormuz, and also other topics. But those were the main ones. The Americans today avoid escalating this war to other levels, going back to how it was before, because it is harming Donald Trump's own image, since the economy of the Strait of Hormuz is his main Achilles heel. Of course, the Americans depend on the Strait of Hormuz for only 2%, but this has impacts on the American allies. So this weakens foreign policy, including also American domestic policy, because the price of a gallon of gasoline has gone up in recent months, to pressure Iran so that it never acquires a nuclear device. This, as I've already been pointing out here over the past few months, and for Iran, it's to lift or ease these American and Western sanctions over the past few years, which have undoubtedly impacted the Iranian economy. However, the main party responsible for a ruined economy and high inflation is actually the Iranian regime itself. And they also want, of course, to get a reconstruction package for Iran worth $300 billion, which the Americans denied, saying that's fake news. So, in general, these discussions and memorandums are meant to reach an agreement, and today this debate took place in Switzerland. And I'll tell you in advance, it seems there was a small advance in some negotiations, as I'm highlighting here for you in these sectors. Yeah, but there wasn't, for example, an official photo. There was no handshake between them, and there was no final solution to reach an agreement. But there were these discussions. And the overall goal is to turn this ceasefire and this memorandum of understanding between them into a final, comprehensive, and sustainable agreement over the next 60 years, 60 days. So it will be 60 very intense days, especially with the instabilities that are happening right now in the northern region of Israel and in Lebanon. I hope you enjoyed this analysis. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any content.